Hi, and welcome to English-Fabule. Are you learning English? Great. Let's learn English with a very interesting story. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. Let's get started.
President Donald Trump got ready to speak to the country. It was December 2025, and he was 11 months into his second term as president. This was a very difficult time for him. Many people did not approve of his leadership. His approval ratings were very low, near his lowest point ever. Most Americans felt worried about the economy. They believed the country was in a recession, meaning money was tight and jobs were few. This made his presidency seem to be in danger. This speech was his biggest gamble to win back the public's trust. The political pressure on President Trump was very high. Recent polls showed that only 39% of Americans approved of him. This was one of the lowest numbers he had ever had. Many people, about 57%, did not like how he was managing the economy. They felt prices for everyday things were too expensive. Americans wondered if his policies were truly helping them, making it a very tense situation. The White House had told everyone that President Trump would talk about historic accomplishments. They also said he would share his big plans for the future. People were eager to hear what surprising news, or bombshells, he might drop. The speech was set for 9 o'clock at night, Eastern Time. It was so important that it replaced the season finale of the popular TV show Survivor, showing its significance. Millions of people across the country turned on their televisions. They were not aware of how big the news would be. President Trump was about to make a stunning announcement. This news would concern the U.S. military. The money for this plan came from a very controversial place. This funding was already being challenged in the nation's highest court. The public watched, waiting to hear what he would say next. 2. A big surprise. President Trump had a big surprise for the nation. He announced a special warrior dividend for the military. Every active duty service member would receive $1,776. This payment was a special gift right before Christmas. The number, 1,776, was chosen to remember the year America became a free country. About 1.45 million soldiers were set to get this money. This meant the total cost for these payments was more than $2.5 billion. President Trump told the nation where this large amount of money came from. He said it was from tariffs. Tariffs are extra taxes on goods that come into the country from other nations. He explained that these tariffs had brought in much more money than anyone expected, about $195 billion in 1 year. The announcement of the warrior dividend felt good to many people. Soldiers were happy to get the extra money, especially during the holiday season. But there was a big problem with where the money came from. The way these payments were funded was not very stable legally. A court called the U.S. Court of International Trade had already decided that most of President Trump's tariffs were against the law. These tariffs were still in place, but only because the government was asking a higher court to review the decision. President Trump had just given billions of dollars to the soldiers, saying it came from these tariffs. But the country's highest court, the Supreme Court, was going to hear arguments about these very tariffs. Their decision would make it clear if the tariffs were truly legal or not. Was this grand gift a clever move to gain support? Or was it an unlawful use of power that was about to fall apart? 3. Are prices going down? President Donald Trump looked into the camera. He told the nation that his economic plans were working well. "I took over a big problem," he said. "Now, wages are up and prices are going down." He claimed that when he first became president, inflation was the worst in almost 50 years. He even suggested it was the worst ever. But the facts told a different story. When President Trump began his second term in January 2025, prices were already falling. Inflation was around 3%, much lower than its highest point of 9.1% that happened a few years before. Also, prices were even higher back in the late 1970s and early 1980s, so his claim about it being the worst ever was not correct. After President Trump took office, inflation continued to fall for some months. But then, in May 2025, prices started to rise again. By September, just before his speech, inflation was back to 3%, the same as when he started. Jerome Powell, the head of the Federal Reserve, a very important bank in the country, said that President Trump's tariffs, which are taxes on goods from other countries, were making prices go up. Many people also felt this change. A survey by CBS News showed that nearly 2 out of 3 Americans, 65%, believed that President Trump's policies were making their groceries more expensive. Even some people in his own party, like Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, said that people's bills were not getting cheaper. She said, "You cannot tell people their bills are fine when they are actually going up." President Trump did mention that gas prices had gone down in some places, costing as little as $1.99 per gallon. This was good news for drivers. However, for most other everyday items, people were paying more than they did a year before. Average prices had actually risen by about 17% from January to September 2025. So who would Americans believe? The president's words on TV or what they saw in their own wallets and at the grocery store? President Trump's claim about prices falling was a big risk, going against what millions of people experienced every day. But this was only the first surprising economic statement he made. His next claim was about an amount of money so huge, $18 trillion, that it even disagreed with numbers from his own White House. 4. A lot of money. President Donald Trump then made another big claim during his speech to the nation. He announced that he had brought a huge $18 trillion in investment into the United States. This was a truly astonishing number, almost unbelievable for many listeners. He said this massive amount of money was flowing into the country because of his hard work and policies. However, fact-checkers and news groups quickly looked at this claim. They found some very clear problems. Only hours before President Trump spoke, his own White House's official website showed a different figure. It reported that the total investment was closer to $9.6 trillion. This meant the number President Trump announced was almost
double what his own government was officially reporting just earlier that day. This large difference made many people wonder. A well-known news organization, CNN, had already looked into these investment numbers. Their investigation in October 2025 found that the White House's method for counting these investments was deeply flawed. For example, the count included many things that were not real money or new projects.
It listed vague promises from other countries. It also included non-binding commitments, meaning agreements that did not actually require anyone to spend money. These were not actual investments in real businesses or new jobs. The true amount of solid new investment was much, much lower than even the $9.6 trillion figure. These findings made President Trump's economic statements seem less credible. The core parts of his speech about the economy now had many factual holes. After these claims about money, President Trump moved to other parts of his speech. He changed his focus to border security and health care. He likely felt very confident about these two areas, but would his claims about the border and health care also be closely checked, or would they stand strong? 5. The border and your health. President Donald Trump then spoke about securing the border. He said he found the worst border anywhere in the world when he took office. He claimed that in just a few short months, his government had changed it from worst to best. This was one area where his words matched official numbers. Data showed that the number of people crossing the border without permission had gone down a lot during his second term. This was a big change compared to the months before he became president again. Many people saw this as a clear achievement for his administration, showing real improvement. But then, President Trump talked about health.
This part of his speech was quite different. Millions of Americans were worried because special money that helped pay for health insurance was going to stop at the end of 2025. Many expected a clear plan to help them. However, President Trump did not give a new, full plan to replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as the ACA. Instead, he introduced a website called Trump RX. This new website would let people buy medicines directly from certain drug makers. He said that his government had already made agreements with several large drug companies. For example, he said that expensive medicines like Ozempic and Wegovy would cost much less through Trump RX, about $350 per month, instead of their usual prices of around $1,000 or $1,350. Then, President Trump made a truly big promise about drug prices. He claimed that his team was working hard with medicine companies and even with other countries. He said these talks aimed to bring medicine prices down by an amazing 400 to 600%. This was a number so large that it made many people stop and think. Such big price drops would mean that many medicines would be almost free. But President Trump offered no details on how this massive reduction would actually happen. Listeners were left to wonder if such a huge promise could ever be real. So the speech ended with many questions about health care for the people.
While President Trump could show real success with the border, his solution for health care was a vague promise. It left millions of people facing the end of their insurance help, with no clear safety net. His next move, however, would not be about making policies for everyday people. Instead, it was a direct power play against one of the most powerful and independent financial groups in the world. This group helps manage the nation's money and is known for keeping its work separate from politics. A new bank boss. Donald Trump spoke about the Federal Reserve. He said he would soon name a new person to lead it. This new leader, he said, would believe in lower interest rates by a lot. The Federal Reserve is an important bank in the United States. Its job is to keep prices stable and help people find jobs. It does this by changing interest rates. It is supposed to be independent, meaning it should not listen to politicians. President Trump and the current Fed leader, Jerome Powell, had different ideas. President Trump wanted interest rates to be much lower. He believed this would help the economy grow faster. But Jerome Powell and other Fed officials worried about prices going up too quickly. They wanted to make sure prices stayed stable. The Federal Reserve had already cut interest rates 3 times in 2025, including in December. Still, President Trump wanted even more cuts. Trump's words showed he wanted someone who would follow his ideas for the economy.
This made some people worried. They thought it could hurt the Federal Reserve's independence. If the president chooses a bank boss just for political reasons, it might not be good for the country's money system. A president picking a Fed chair to do his bidding could change how the nation's economy is managed. This move showed a strong desire to control a very important financial group. This move showed Donald Trump wanted to have more power over the country's money. It was not just what he said that surprised people. It was also how he said it. His speech was very strong and sometimes angry. This way of speaking was new for a president. It told people more than his words alone. The president is angry. President Donald Trump's speech was not calm. He did not speak in a soft, measured voice like many presidents do for national addresses. Instead, he spoke with much anger and strong emotion, often shouting his words. An NPR reporter noted the address resembled a Trump rally, minus the audience. This meant it felt like a high-energy political event, full of his usual style, but without the live crowd typically cheering him on. President Trump often blamed others for current problems. His speaking style focused on putting responsibility for economic difficulties on past leaders. He insisted that he had inherited a mess when he took office for his second term. He told the country that Democrats had caused mayhem and brought the United States to the brink of ruin. He directly said, "Biden gave you prices. Biden gave you the highest inflation in history. And we're bringing those prices down rapidly." He wanted people to believe his administration was fixing everything the previous one broke. However, not everyone agreed with President Trump's strong claims. Some people from his own political party were worried about his message. Matthew Bartlett, a Republican strategist who had worked for President Trump, commented on the speech.
He warned, "This is not a time for just happy talk. This is an economically painful moment for many people." Bartlett explained that if President Trump tried to tell Americans not to believe what they were truly experiencing financially, it would harm his standing. Many voters were struggling with high costs for groceries, rising bills, and expensive holiday shopping. They could not easily ignore these daily money problems. The speech was a big performance from President Trump, full of strong words and feelings. He tried hard to convince everyone that he was succeeding. But would people believe his words or what they experienced every day? As soon as the speech ended, many news organizations and fact-checkers immediately started to analyze every claim. They wanted to see if his statements were true. The public's reaction was also about to be clear. This speech would create a large political debate that would continue for many months. What people said.
The president's speech ended, and many people watched on TV. Right away, news groups and fact-checkers started their work. They looked closely at everything Donald Trump said. They quickly found that many of his statements were not correct. One big problem was about money and prices. President Trump said that when he started his second term, prices were very high, the worst in 48 years. He also told the nation that prices were now coming down greatly. But fact-checkers showed this was not true. Prices were already getting lower when he took office in January 2025. After that, prices for many things actually went up again, especially after May 2025. People felt this truth when they bought food or paid their bills. A poll found that most Americans, about 2/3, believed the president's actions made groceries more expensive. Another large claim was about money coming into the country. President Trump said he had secured $18 trillion in investment for the United States. This was a very big number. However, even his own White House website said a much smaller number, $9.6 trillion. News reports from CNN also showed that these numbers were not accurate. Many of the promises counted were not real investments. They were vague talks or ideas, not actual money spent in the country. The speech showed how divided America was.
For some people, the president was telling his truth, trying to make things better for the country. For others, he was not listening to what real families were going through every day. His words did not match what many people saw with their own eyes or felt in their wallets. This made a big gap between what the president said and what people believed. The speech was meant to make people trust President Trump more, but many experts and everyday citizens felt it did the opposite. It made the big problem of his presidency even clearer. Many Americans did not believe what he said about the economy. This lack of trust was a major challenge for his administration. It made people wonder what would happen next in the country's politics. For some people, the president was telling his truth, trying to make things better for the country. For others, he was not listening to what real families were going through every day. His words did not match what many people saw with their own eyes or felt in their wallets. This made a big gap between what the president said and what people believed.
The speech was meant to make people trust President Trump more, but many experts and everyday citizens felt it did the opposite. It made the big problem of his presidency even clearer. Many Americans did not believe what he said about the economy. This lack of trust was a major challenge for his administration. It made people wonder what would happen next in the country's politics. Voters would have a chance to speak again soon, in the 2026 midterm elections. Then they would give their answer about the president's words and his actions. Their choices at the polls would decide the future. What do you think was the biggest surprise from the president's speech?
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.